Hi, everybody. It is Sunday, August 11th. I'm going to do just kind of an update for kind of where we're at. But I also want to talk about how we got ourselves into this situation. What I mean is the fact that we're spirits inside of a physical body, uh, experiencing this life, this reality. I still get. You probably know what about this term is called downloads. I still get downloads, but I just get messages every day now. So I mean, when I first started getting a lot of downloads, it was like uh, when you're sleeping, which is in a sense that's when your spirit is free to uh, sort of leave the body and go into kind of this world of where there's no time. You can go back and forth in time. It's like you're, in a sense, what people don't realize is when you're astroplaning or when you're dreaming, in a sense, that you're being slightly detached from your physical body. Never just the little white orb of spirit inside you is actually going places and doing things, and then because there's a tether, it has to come back to this physical body again. So, for instance, when I was first getting a lot of downloads, I would be sort of woken up about 3:30 in the morning, and it's just all this information. It's like having a dream, and you want to write it down before you forget about it. That's kind of what it was like. But it was like a lot of really profound information, and it was like, okay, this is crazy. I better write it down before I forget. And that's kind of what I would do. I would write it down. So I got a lot of information years ago, but now it's more like I don't have to be sleeping. It's just a direct connection, and it's basically telepathic messages. Just thoughts inside your head. Just it's like, wow, are you kidding me? And you just most of the time, if that ever happens to you, you always try to separate it from your reality. Going, oh, that's just a crazy thought, or I don't know about that. You have to sort of mull it over for it to make sense into your physical brain. And this is kind of what I want to talk about is once we realize that we are eternal spirits inhabiting a physical body, what our parents and our teachers failed to tell us, it's like hopefully this will be taught in schools in the future or something, but because these bodies are basically physical machines, it's a physical robot in a sense. So, and our brains is the main computer, and how these physical computers learn things is through repetition. So, as we're growing up, our mom and dads are always teaching us, don't do this, do that. It creates neural neural pathways in our brains, and the more we do them over and over and over again, the stronger that pathway works in our brain. So in a sense, what we're doing is we're programming our physical brain, our physical computer, and that's really all it is. It's it's kind of a processor for information, and then it stores it. So then these physical bodies have memories, and that's how we. Now, because if you didn't have memory, I call it a memory chip in our physical bodies, then obviously there's no sense of even learning anything because you've got to retain that repetition. Now, here's where we get ourselves into trouble because, especially if you're just a young child, what you don't understand, I guess, is the fact that you're being programmed. You are. You're being programmed by your teachers, by your parents, by religions, by everything. And it's basically the power of repetition. Now, I mean, if you can use that repetition for some good things, um, and there's a lot of really good lessons that we've learned, and I'm glad I remember them. I'm glad I've got access to that. And I'll give you a few examples. Is you know, well, even just learning how to ride a bike, for example. It's like the first time you do it, your brains have to connect with your arm muscles and your leg muscles, and you're in a sense programming your physical body now to ride this bike. And it's like, okay, you're not going to get it the first time. It's really rare. So what I kind of noticed was there's kind of like a power of three. When you repeat things at least three times, that's when it kind of starts creating a neural pathway, and it becomes, this is what you end up learning. This is what's written in your computer. Now, as you can imagine, once you start thinking of it that way, you start realizing, well, it really depends on who's putting the information in your head. Like who's programming the robots, which in a sense that's what we are. We're independent. That's the really cool thing about these bodies, and that's why they're kind of coveted throughout the universe, because we've got these physical bodies that can be programmed to do tasks like slaves type of thing, or to be creative. That's really the cool thing about it. It's like, and what we noticed with these physical bodies, is it can have its own thoughts. And for instance, it can, once it gets old enough, and, for me, it was like in my late 20s, early 30s, I'm starting to realize, wait a minute, I've been programmed to think a certain way. And I went, well, I don't want to do that. And it just doesn't make sense. So in a sense, I have to override or try to get rid of the old programming in my head and then write a new set of things to do. Because I said, I don't want to do that anymore. I don't want to work 9 to 5. I want to be more creative. I want to have my own job or whatever. So you have to kind of reprogram your physical computer. And so it's not a coincidence. That's why how stories got carried on throughout our history from our ancestors is they realize it's about repetition. So if you tell a story long enough, then that's basically, it becomes a fact. It's like, well, my grandfather and his great-grandfather told me this story over and over. The problem with that one is it gets translated slightly different because everybody has their own take on that story and the way they remember it and also the way they convey it. So it's best to write it down. So another thing that you'll notice is, for instance, this works really well for not just story creating, but also for music. So it's not a coincidence that like a chorus is repeated 3 times. So you remember that song, and it could be as simple as Jingle Bells or, your favorite song. The chorus goes over and over and over again so you can remember it. And then that's how our brains work. It's basically we learn through repetition. So, it gets more complicated because if you are more open-minded, which really, in a sense, what open-minded means is you're open to reprogram your computer. It's like you're going, well, maybe I've got the capacity to write new information in there. And what's interesting is when you take in new information, it's like pulling up files from your memory. You can compare the 2 files and you go, well, wait a minute, I think this new information is more valid than this one. This one makes more sense to me. And this one, the problem is I wish you could just sort of delete that file, but you can't. What you have to do is you have to almost rewrite it if you can. If you can merge this one over top of that one and somehow reroute those neural pathways to remember this new idea and overwrite the old one. It takes a while. Some people call that deprogramming, which is kind of true. So there's different ways of looking at it. Um, but yeah, when I got a bit of a download the other night, and they were reminding me of this. So I wrote down a bunch of notes, and they said to try to tell you guys that the controllers, and this is where how we got in trouble, the people that took control of this world, they know these human computers, they know these biological robots, how they work, and then they know, and that's why they took over the pharmaceutical industry, they took over the education system, they took over pseudoscience, whatever. They realized, well, if we can teach these people ever since they're children in this, you know, very uniform way of like believing this reality through repetition, obviously, and through going through schools and things like that, they can take control of our minds because we have a tendency, and this is kind of almost our downfall. We're by nature, human beings are very honest creatures, and we're always thinking to ourselves, well, why would someone lie to us? That concept sort of eludes us, especially as children. We just don't understand why someone could be so deceptive. Like, to what end? Like, why? Why would someone lie to me? We know that as adults now. It's because of their own personal self-gain. So they're basically lying to you because they want something you have, or whatever, or they need you to help them carry out something, or yeah. So this is, like I said, the kind of where we got ourselves into this problem is we're not taught in schools to basically be critical thinkers. So we only kind of notice that or start putting that together, I guess in a sense, even just lately. But the people that we consider, whether it's conspiracy theorists or people that don't comply, they're the ones that are trying to, in a sense, reprogram themselves because they realize, wait a minute, this is, something isn't right about this. So they want more information, and that's the interesting thing about us as beings here is we're always seeking to either validate what we were taught or we remember, or to gain new information. We want to be knowledgeable, and that knowledge is there. I mean, the truth is there, but unfortunately, when you're on this world and you're playing this game sort of amongst other beings down here, you have to be careful of that because it's like you're living in lie planet. It's like this. There's just a lot of deception going on constantly, and you start figuring it out the older you get, and that's the benefit of getting older. You get older and wiser. That's if you're a critical thinker. But then you start realizing, wait a minute, there's more to this story. I need more information before I make a final decision. But generally what happens is we don't figure that out until where it's too late to make an effect on anybody. So the majority of programming is always done when we're younger and, as children and young adults. And it's like, that's a really critical time, So, I mean, going back to what I was trying to say is our controllers, they know how to do this. And they use it in a lot of different ways, but one of the main reasons, or not main reasons, but the main ways that they control this is through the media. And again, it's through repetition. They'll just repeat something over and over and over again, whether it's Orange Man bad, or that's just weird, or this is a threat to our democracy, whatever. So if you're watching TV and you hear that 3 separate times, especially for 3 different news channels, you think, well, it's got to be true. And that's just 3 times. So if you hear it 10 times that week and 20 times, it creates a pathway in someone with a weak mind, let me put it that way, which is average people. And I'm not saying weak is stupid. It's just it's more like it's like they don't have their defenses up to go. Wait a minute, that's I got to be critical. What are they saying when they're saying this thing over and over and over again? So that's I was going to say we're all vulnerable to that, which we are sort of. But then there's people like me. I stopped watching TV ever since 2014. So it's like it's 10 years now. So I'm very very picky and very discerning when I want to watch a video or something, and I'm very sort of skeptical, things like that. So for me, I know that I have a biological computer that I'm programming constantly, and I try to use it to my advantage. So in other words, I'm very, very picky. It's very similar to, for instance, us with our function of our body. Once you realize, this physical body is maintained and gets its energy from the intake of what we eat and drink, then you start realizing, well, wait a minute, I better be careful of what I put inside this machine. This is a physical machine, and I'm responsible for keeping its function. It's got to run properly, and that includes your brain. So, yeah, unfortunately we're a minority. There's obviously a lot of us out there that we sort of caught on to what's going on, and it's like, okay, I gotta be discerning when I watch TV. Well, just stop watching TV, but just when I watch a video or read a book or something, because it's like once that information goes in, it's pretty hard to write over it. So in other words, I'm trying to save myself the trouble of rewriting my biological brain's programming. So I want to be just more discerning and more aware of what I put into my body, whether it's food or through your mind. So yeah, that's kind of what I was going to talk about. So and that's kind of how we got into this trouble. Is what I mean is because the controllers, they've known about that, and they've hijacked, especially our education system, media, and they know that because once they control your mind, they control you. So yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to talk about today. Other than that, as you guys can see, we're slowly getting deprogrammed from this control matrix, and we're getting out of trouble. It's going to take a lot of work, but we're heading in the right direction now. The world's waking up to this control system that's been really clamping down, and we're fighting against it, and we're winning. So I know I've told you before, it's like I've already been shown how this chapter ends, and it's definitely positive. We get out of this, so we're doing okay. Okay, that's my little chat for today, and I'll talk to you probably next month. Okay.